don't think you're sleeping. Can you come back in an hour?
Need sleepy.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God!
It's now time for the Billy C. Morning Show, part of the Billy C. Boxing Network. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Caligiero, and it's time for the Billy C. Morning Show. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody had a great weekend, and we're glad to be part of your morning this morning, and hopefully every morning. Don't forget, I want to give a shout out to all of our viewers on Fight TV and on Fight.tv. That's FITE.tv. Glad to be part of your morning or whenever you're watching. Today's show is being brought to you in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant, located in beautiful St. Simons Island, Georgia. And it is still beautiful despite the hurricane damage. They have reopened the island, so don't be scared. Go down to Sal's. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com. Don't forget, if you're heading south for the winter, it's literally 15 minutes off of I-95. Out of your way. That includes stopping for a couple of lights. Make the trip to Sal's. You won't regret it. Trust me on that one. And you'll get a delicioso dessert to go with your meal. So check that out. Give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328, or check out the website, salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com. Or if you need any other information, drop me an email and I'll hook you up. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by JKJ Boxing Magazine, and their next issue is due out soon. I'm waiting to hear from the publisher on that one. Our very own Dax Khan, who's scheduled to join us here a little bit later, will have a feature article in that one. You want to get a copy of the latest, just visit our website, www.billycboxing.com, and click on the JKJ Boxing Magazine cover. And today's show is also being brought to us in part by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. And you can literally get a copy of it right now by visiting barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. Hey, listen, I'm going to be doing a book signing on November 6th. It's a Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It'll be held in Glens Falls, New York at the Queensberry Hotel. It's a book fair. A lot of other authors, all different types of books, not just sports books or boxing books, will be there. It's a great event. There's a lot of people. It draws from all over the Adirondacks. So if you're going to be in the area, make sure you stop by the Queensberry Hotel between 10 and 2 p.m. on November 6th and get a copy of my book. I'll sign it. I'll talk boxing with you. And there's a lot of other stuff there as well. Today's show coming up a little bit later. We got Dax Khan around 8:30 a.m. or so. Big news. It was announced on the BBC Radio 5 over the weekend that there is a deal in place, according to Eddie Hearn and his promotional company, Matchbox. No, I always say Matchbox. It's not Matchbox. Those were little cars that I played with. But Eddie Hearn has announced that the fight is pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered between Anthony Joshua, the current IBF World Heavyweight Champion, and former champion Vladimir Klitschko. Now they are waiting for one thing right now. They got the date set. They got the venue set. They're waiting for one thing, and that is the WBA to see if they're going to put their title up on the line along with Anthony Joshua's IBF. Now, the WBO has already bailed. They are letting Joseph Parker and Andy Ruiz contend for that. But that's a whole nother story. I got some fight results to talk about. I got NFL scores. We got some emails to read. All of that stuff is coming up in a few minutes. But joining me right now from St. Simons Island, he's my man, Sal Rocky Senecola. Sal, what do you think? Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko, my man.
I love it. I love it, Billy. Let me tell you something. That's going to be one hell of a way to end the year and I think it's going to be a heck of a fight. I see it going two ways.
What way? Tell me.
Either Anthony Joshua will win or Klitschko will win.
Oh, hey, well, whoa. What did you? What do you have? The batteries for my crystal ball that I sent down for you? Well, that's
I know.
You're dead on.
I swept your Nostradamus hat.
You're dead on with that. You're dead on with that because I agree with you. Either Anthony Joshua is going to win or Vladimir Klitschko is going to win.
Let me tell you.
Well, wait. What you're saying is that there's no way there's going to be a draw, right?
No way. There's not going to be a draw. No, I don't think so. But I will bet that one. I'll bet on the over/under round, and I'll bet on no draw. How's that?
Yeah.
But let me tell you something. This could be a really, really exciting fight. Even though Klitschko, who held the World Heavyweight Championship for 10 years, I mean, you look at that feat alone, and for him not to be known as the kicker of all entities here, 10 years of a reign of a heavyweight championship belt, the most coveted belt and title in the whole world of sports, it's amazing. And but he does have some solid tools that have sustained that level of success for so long. Now, sure, he's a lot older, but and you have one heck of a young lion in Anthony Joshua, who's just got the solid foundation. He's got the whole arsenal. The only thing I'd be suspect is Anthony Joshua's chin, who hasn't been able to get tested, just like Mike Tyson. When he ran up those wins all the time, his chin was never really tested, and when it was, by Buster Mathis, he had a hard time eating a right hand.
Well, it was James Buster Douglas. You always say you always say Buster Mathis. But
Buster
listen,
Mathis was an Olympian, I think, and he did some things in the heavyweight division, but never. No, I do. Thank you for correcting me. It was Buster Douglas. Buster Mathis. Oh my God.
Mathis was a guy who ended up fighting in the Olympics.
Yes.
Actually, no. Joe Frazier.
Yes.
Right. That was the one. But anyway, listen.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it was the other Buster. Hey, Buster. Hey,
Listen, you go when you look at Klitschko real quick. He was the WBO champion. Then he lost it when he was knocked out. Talk about getting your chin tested. He was knocked out by Corey Sanders way back in 2003. He fought a couple of more fights until he got a shot at that same WBO title against Layman Brewster in 2004. And since then, he had won. I mean, listen, whether you like Vladimir Klitschko or not, he faced every single possible opponent that was available from the time he regained his title when he fought Layman Brewster in 2004. For the next almost 10 full years of fighting all the best heavyweights that were given to him until he met up with Tyson Fury almost a year ago, winning all those fights. So yes, very legit heavyweight champion. He steps in with a guy that you're 100% right. He has shown he's been down, so he's shown that his chin is suspect. But Anthony Joshua gets better and better and better. I love Anthony Joshua. I think he's the future of the division at 27 years old. And what I'm really admiring, and keep in mind, Klitschko's 40, but what I'm really admiring about Anthony Joshua is the fact that he's not afraid to fight anybody. I mean, listen, he fought Kevin Johnson not too long ago. Kevin Johnson is... a real good test. I thought he was going to have trouble with him. He knocked him out in 2. Fought another up-and-coming guy in Dillian White. Beat him in 7. Knocked out Charles Martin for the title in 2. Faced a tough Dominic Brazil and stopped him in 7. Those are his last handful of fights. I can't wait for this fight. It's going to be December 10th at the Manchester Arena. It's a place that's going to seat, the way they configure it, anywhere it's from 20 to 25,000 people. December 10th. Man, I can't wait for that one, Sal.
Bill, I tell you had me salivating right now. And because I'll tell you, this is going to be a great fight. I really do. I see Joshua coming out there with his chin down, his hands up, and just giving a real great effort, being explosive with his power, and Klitschko having to maybe open up the first round, just filling each other out. But I see a war.
Well, look at
both guys not
keep this in mind.
To face each other.
Keep this in mind too. Vladimir Klitschko's been out for a year. Now, at 40 years old, and this is another thing I just want to bring up because I want to run through a couple of things real quick. We got some emails. We got Dax coming on, and we'll talk a lot more about the Anthony Joshua-Vladimir Klitschko fight. But, the one point I want to make, and then I just want to move on for a second, is this. Last week we were talking about Danny Garcia. Everybody's saying Danny Garcia is going to fight Keith Thurman and all this stuff. And then what do we get? We get, he's going to fight Samuel Vargas in a tune-up fight. A tune-up fight. Vladimir Klitschko was a champion. He lost his title. Listen, he loses his title to Tyson Fury, and he's out for almost a year. And the man steps up and fights arguably the best heavyweight out there in the world today. No tune-up fight needed. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, what that means is real fighters fight real opponents, and both Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko are demonstrating that, Sal.
Welcome to the era of what you said right there. Fighters that are doing what they're paid to do and what they're expected to do. Fight all opposition and ready. And you know what? That was a great analogy you used. He's been off for a year, and you're a pro. You don't need a tune-up. You want to tune up, go get a guitar. The bottom line is, I can understand if, he'd have more of a reason to do so than anybody, but, he didn't have to say it. He just wants to say, I'm going to sign the dotted line. I'm going to fight for the World Heavyweight Championship, and I'm going to go out there and be the best I can. That's it. No excuses, nothing. It's just right there, black and white. And that's what you want to hear from the prospective champions and the champions. They're willing to fight.
Just real quick, we got a couple of fights. It's been a slow several weeks in the sport, but, I've mentioned a lot of times, and if people listen to the show a while ago, BJ Flores is a guy that I think is probably in the top 2 or 3, in my opinion, as far as a ringside analyst, and I've been saying it for a long time. However, as a fighter, and he talks like he's this great fighter, and he used to wear a T-shirt that said anyone, any place, any time, or something like that. And if you look at his resume, he fought nobody. Anytime he ever fought anyone halfway decent, he lost. And the same thing happened this past weekend when Tony Bello knocked him out in 3 rounds to improve to 28-2 with a draw. BJ Flores, who was out cold, drops to 32-3-1 with 20 knockouts. And I was looking at the photos at the weigh-in, and neither one of them looked like they were in that great a shape. But BJ Flores looked like he had a couple of rolls hanging. But anyway, Tony Bellew is now trying to. David Hay is trying to get a fight with him, which I think is a joke. But anyway, in another fight,
you say David Bay? That's another old thing.
Yeah. That's they fought around this as much as recently as together. But listen, in an upset of sorts, Erkan Temper was an undefeated German heavyweight that was making some noise. He stepped in with a guy that hasn't really performed over the last several years, and a lot of people, including myself, have given up on Christian Hammer. But he got everyone opening up their eyes again when he took care of Tepper over the weekend with a decision to improve to 20 wins and 4 losses, 116-112, 117-112 for Christian Hammer, and one judge had it the other way, must have been the German judge, 115-113 for Erkan Tepper, who drops to 16-1. So that's what was going on there. I got some NFL and Major League Baseball news, which we'll get to a little bit later. But let's get some emails out of the way. First thing, before we get going with a couple of emails, I want to direct everyone to our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and check out the article that was just posted by Coach on Stanley Ketchel. You want to talk about a great fighter who we lost in our prime.
Not only a great fighter, Bill, but fearless, would fight anybody.
Yeah, but
like Harry Greb too, same thing.
Yeah, but remember something about Stanley Ketchel. He was shot, and obviously his career was ended when he was killed. He was still in his 20s. I mean, and he fought so much. I mean, God knows what would have happened with Stanley Ketchel should he had been able to continue with his career. But take a few minutes and read Coach's article. And let me know what you think. Drop me an email, Billy@TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com. And speaking of middleweights, this weekend, this week's Blast from the Past is on another great middleweight world champion who a lot of people won't know who he is. His name is Jack Dempsey, but it's not the Jack Dempsey that you're thinking of. This is non-parallel Jack Dempsey, was a middleweight and was regarded at the time, given the nickname, that was unbeatable. We'll talk about him, another great middleweight who died very young. But anyway, we got some emails. This one is from my man James. He says, Billy C., this is the fourth week in a row that we've been without boxing on TV except for one pay-per-view. Yes, we were spoiled by the PBC for a while. At one point, there was so many matches I couldn't record all of them. However, even before you should get DirecTV because you can record as many as you want, or I think up to at least 5 or 6. He says, however, even before the PBC, we always had boxing on HBO or Showtime every weekend. Now there's not even broadcasting fights. Are those channels getting out of the game? Let me just try to go through this real quick. I've said that the PBC, a lot of people were pissed off when I said the PBC was hurting boxing. And in a sense, it's a double-edged sword. The PBC was and still is to a degree, a smokescreen. What they tried to do is give us a lot of fights on TV, which they did. And we all, including myself, enjoyed watching the fights every single week, and in some cases multiple times during the week, thanks to the PBC. However, the model in which they ran was destined for failure. We all know that Al Heyman is a brilliant man, and we all thought that maybe he had something up his sleeve and was going to fool us all, but it doesn't look like he did have anything up his sleeve or whatever, because the bottom line is it looked like he was just a mad scientist with an open checkbook that could pay whatever he wanted for fights and everything else. Where the networks came in is that he paid the networks for the time. So therefore, anybody, if you go to a TV or radio station and say, hey, I want to buy a block of time, and they give you a price, they don't care what you put on. You could be watching me and Sal playing tiddlywinks, and as long as we're paying the network, they'll let us put it on. They don't care. And that's what the PBC...
advertisement dollars.
That's right. They don't have to worry about advertisement dollars. If you're paying them for that block of time, they're getting all their expenses paid for. So in a nutshell, what happened was a lot of these networks stopped. They weren't paying promoters anymore. Everybody went the other route. And like I said many times, once the PBC failed, it was going to take up to 1 year, ladies and gentlemen, for boxing to reboot itself, to get people back on, if the networks even care. The ratings were plummeting even on free TV. We don't have any characters in the sport anymore that attract people, with the exception of a Triple G and a Canelo Alvarez to a degree. But, when you have fighters that don't fight the fights the fans want, it's like other sports that refuse to play another team just because they're good. So the bottom line is boxing is devouring itself. And, when you have fights like Klitschko, Anthony Joshua being announced, and Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev, those are the kinds of fights we got to have. And if we had those consistently, instead of hearing Danny Garcia picking some, Samuel Vargas, who no disrespect to Samuel Vargas, but the truth of the matter is that, that's not a fight that everyone was chomping at the bit for. I need a tune-up. Oh, I want this guy. Daniel Jacobs trying to fight Triple G. Now he's outpriced. First of all, he was offered almost $2 million for the fight, and he's turning it down. The guy isn't going to make that much money anywhere else. It's a joke, and that's why the PBC has hurt us, James, and the trickle-down effect.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Sal. Go ahead, stand up. What's your question?
I'm in the front row.
All right, I see you. What's up?
All right, thank you. I think maybe not this to stick up for Al Heyman. But based on the model of giving good fights and a steady diet of good fights, maybe in the back of his mind, what he was trying to do, well, he was using other people's money to create the interest, was to just hope that the networks would say, hey, okay, we love this level of competition. Now the money's out. We're going to pay you to bring it on once a month or something like that. I mean, I know that's the way he wanted it to happen. It didn't happen because everyone wants the money, sponsor the dollars, and the networks are no longer willing to put it up to buy it.
Well, wait a minute. He thought that he would be able, and this is just an assumption because he doesn't talk to the media, and I've never talked to Mr.
No,
Heyman
and
myself.
I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, you know.
No, but what I said earlier, and John from LDL TV and I, we literally sat down with pen and paper and calculators and tried to, because we know what the expenses are and everything, and we tried to calculate, and the only thing that we came up with was that he was going to pay for the time and then come back with pay-per-views, like the potential, when
Right.
Sean Porter and Keith Thurman, that was a good pay-per-view. Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, good pay-per-view. But anyway, he didn't. So what he did was he paid the networks. Now, if you noticed and you watch those shows, you're not going to see any infusion of new sponsors, which would have been Al Heyman's responsibility to bring in the sponsors.
Yes.
The network already
Bingo.
has their own. They're already being paid their fee for the time and what have you, right? So
That's right.
what
He
we
could
saw,
sustain his income better like that.
well, what we saw was no more new advertisers. We didn't see any advertising. People jumping on the advertising bandwagon with the numbers that the PBC was generating on the networks. And as a result, now they out of money. And if you go to them with that product to the network and say, hey, now we want you to pay us, they're going to say, well, we don't see ourselves, the networks now, bringing in the revenue from the advertisers. And, that's the main thing. But anyway,
I open that up just because now you explain the whole process thoroughly, where the layman out there or even the fan understands how this usually works, and that was very clear and very precise. And you and John were right when you put it on paper. He was paying for all of it, maybe in hope that the networks would turn around when the money was over, saying, "Hey, we're going to get the sponsors. We're going to do this." But that's where he failed, because he could have gotten sponsors. He could have had to sustain the nice level of everything else going on forward, but it didn't, because he just had other people's money he was using. And when you don't have your own vested interest, your own skin in the game, you don't have as much. You don't have anything to lose, and that's what he did.
Well, and the other thing was, if the advertising that you saw on the PBC were the same sponsors you saw on every other boxing network when they were footing the bill. You had Tecate beer, you had Corona beer. We did have I did notice a couple of different ones, but on Spike TV, they had their own deal. So I think they were paying the PBC. I think the PBC was getting paid from Spike and Showtime only. But you didn't see any new sponsors. What I was looking for was new sponsors we hadn't seen before, and then we could have saw some light at the end of the tunnel. But no, what Al Heyman ended up doing was paying his fighters, just like you said, from other people's money, paying them too much, which has created an issue today where fighters are demanding above their value for fights. And he got his cut of those exaggerated purses. So at the end of the day, Al Heyman hasn't lost a penny of Al Heyman's money, and he's pocketed at least $10 million from his own cut from all the other fighters. And now you're starting to hear grumblings from the fighters who all signed with him, almost 300 of them, and they're not busy, they're not fighting, they're on the shelf. And because they cut and severed ties with other connections and promoters and networks, they're going to be in a heap of trouble. I'm telling you, it's going to take a year for us to recover. So everybody's bummed out about the slow couple of weeks. Get used to it. We got another email. This one's from Raheem. Raheem says, good morning, Billy C. It's Raheem. Hey, Raheem. I know when you email me, it says on the email. But he says, Ward versus Kovalev will be an interesting matchup. Both have what it takes to win, but I know Ward will use his sweet science against the big hitter. Ward has quickness and the defense to frustrate Kovalev. Ward, I think, will go the distance, but can knock out Kovalev if he applies the sweet science correctly. I think that this has a chance of being a fight of the year. I appreciate the email, Raheem. And, the one thing I want to say, Raheem, I appreciate your interest in the sport. I know you're a young guy, and I think that it's important that people that are in their early 20s really follow boxing. And it doesn't matter who you like or who you don't like. As long as you follow it, it's good for the sport. Now, with that said, I think that this is going to be an interesting matchup, and I do believe that Andre Ward will use his ability of the sweet science, if you will, to try to frustrate Kovalev and move and try and pick his shots. That's exactly the way he's got to fight Kovalev, because if he tries to stand toe-to-toe with Kovalev, he's going to find himself sleeping, and that'll be it. As far as him knocking out Kovalev, I don't think he's got the knockout power to knock out Kovalev. Kovalev has been hit by way heavier-handed punchers than Andre Ward. So I don't think that will happen, but you never know. And finally, as far as being fight of the year, I hope you're right, Raheem, because in order for it to be fight of the year, it's going to have to be more entertaining than Carl Frampton, Leo Santa Cruz. It's going to have to be more entertaining than Sean Porter and Keith Thurman. I mean, it's going to be a tough act for them to do it, but hopefully they will. Thanks for the email. We got two more emails here. This one, Sal, is from Mike from Michigan. He says, first I'd like to say we're both correct saying Al Heyman's PBC and whatever else he's involved in would fail. I don't know about that, but I did say it would fail. He says it appears that the crap has finally hit the fan. My question is, what happens to the 200-plus fighters that signed a contract with him? Where are they? Isn't it a travesty that the fighters who signed with Al Heyman are wasting the prime of their careers? What do you think will happen to them when they realize that they're wasting valuable time in their careers by not fighting or fighting soft, second-rate competition? My emails are always too long, so I'll touch one more subject, then be done. What the hell fight were the judges watching when Triple G knocked the hell out of Kell Brook in the 5th round? From what I know now, all three judges had Brook ahead at the time of stoppage. How is that possible? I watched the fight 5 times now, and all 5 times I had Kell Brook winning one round, round number 2. That's it in any form of judging.
Right.
Well, I think I there were some close rounds in that fight.
Rounds, and I even had a couple close rounds I gave to Kell Brook for the benefit of the doubt, just to give it to him.
Right.
But, I had glove kick.
I had the fight. If I recall, I had it even up until the stoppage. But anyway, he said Brook did go down, except the referee blew the call. Why can't judges be accountable for not doing their jobs? If any of those judges had Brook ahead after 4 rounds, they should never be allowed to judge again. There has to be some kind of oversight in the sport, Billy C. There has to be a set of rules of judging a fight. When a judge has a bogus score, that judge needs to be held accountable. It's imperative into the legitimacy. I can't say it today.
Legitimately.
Legitimately. Yeah, legitimately. Yeah. Legitimately. Yeah. That's it.
Like a catcher's mittly.
And longevity of the sport. That one I got.
Longevity?
It's funny. Sometimes I'll come across a word that I can't pronounce for a day, and then I'm fine.
No, I do that all the time. That's why I just look out with that one.
That's why
I'll think of you later when I stumble on others.
Yeah, that's because you remind me of one of my favorite actors, or at least characters on TV, Slip Mahoney. That's
Leo Gorsey, right?
Yeah, that's
Slip
you.
Mahoney. I knew you were going to say Leo Gorsey.
That's right.
Hey, my friends used to call me Slip as a nickname when I was a kid because I used to invent my own word.
There you go. There you go.
There you go. Where you gonna be, you're gonna be God.
He says, so in conclusion, that's exactly why Triple G came at Brook recklessly in a street fight, as he called it. He knew he was going to get robbed if it went the distance, and I fully believe it. And Jacobs, Canelo, Sanders, just name dropping Triple G to help their stagnant careers. It's so transparent that I just have to laugh when I see things like Triple G doesn't want to fight Jacobs on social media. The sport is sickening.
That is
Sorry
kind of funny.
It is, and I actually saw that myself recently. That somebody said, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Triple G doesn't want any piece of Daniel Jacobs. And I'm like, give me a break. Triple G will beat Daniel Jacobs with one arm tied behind his back. I like Daniel Jacobs. It's a great story.
And I know what that's like.
Yeah, I know. I know you do. But as far as the fight, yeah, I had it even. So I'm not going to criticize the judges that much. But as far as Al Heyman and the comments that Mike made about the fighters that are in limbo right now, he's 100% correct that there are going to be some times when these guys are going to be like looking in the mirror and saying, WTF, what did I do? And that's, we said that. We said that a long time ago. So anyway. Always like getting emails from my man Mike. I miss having him call in. That was always fun. But anyway, one last email, Sal. And this one's from our buddy Brett up in Canada. He says, "Hey, Billy C and Sal.
All right.
Hope you guys had a nice, quiet weekend with limited boxing." He says, after seeing Bello beat Flores on and getting into a verbal sparring match with David Haye, I can only think that Haye will probably run from this fight too. I'm not a fan of either of those guys. Both are overrated and wouldn't sell here, meaning in Canada, but probably would sell in the UK. I agree with him there. David Haye should go down to light heavy and fight him, because why should Tony Bellew move up to heavyweight? So, and he did, but no, did he? I forget. I think he might have moved up to cruiserweight, at least for a fight or two. But anyway, he said it would be interesting to see what the next step for Luke Campbell is. If he fights anyone, how he fought Matthews, with a great mixture of punches to the body and head, he will be hard to beat. Who would you guys like to see him fight next? Luke Campbell, I think, is a guy to keep an eye on for sure. As far as Derry Matthews, he was at the end of his career. But I did like the fight, and I would like to see Luke Campbell fight any major top 10 contender right now. That's what I would look for. And I don't mean a blown up, made up guy that appears at number 8 all of a sudden. I'm talking about a legitimate, contender that's across the board a contender. So that's what I would like to see. And he says, also read about the Joshua Klitschko fight. Everything is done, including the network. The only thing left is the sanctioning body. I can't see the IBO giving them a hard time, but I can with the WBO and WBA. They better not screw it up. The thing is that the WBO must have gotten some money, Sal, from Top Rank to let Andy Ruiz fight. They already had Joseph Parker in there as a potential one side of it, but they were hoping that it was going to be against Anthony Joshua. So, I think that they're losing credibility. The IBO, I don't think, has a hard time with it. The WBA is leaning towards it as well. So as long as they can cut a deal with the winner immediately fighting one of their heavyweight champs, so they got a couple of them now, I don't see it being a stumbling block. To be honest with you, Sal, I think the biggest stumbling block was ironing out the Showtime HBO issue, which they already have. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. The whole thing right there, that was the big stumbling block in my eyes as well.
Was the two networks.
Sorry?
Was the two networks, right?
Yeah, the two networks. I mean, that's putting mud in the water right there. I mean, forget about it. They got to iron that stuff out and go on and make a clear passage. But they just want to flex their own muscles and have their own agenda.
Well, let me say this. It shows you now. This is the part of boxing that when everybody believes whatever kind of propaganda they want to believe, at the end of the day, networks are in business to do what, Sal?
Well, if they try to make a profit and make money, I think that's a great attribute.
Listen, isn't that the main objective when you're in business? The main is that another word? Objective is to make
Objective.
money.
Objective works. It could be very applicable at this point.
Right, that's the objective, to make money.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, a promoter's objective is to make money, right?
Yes.
A fighter. You see where I'm going here? A fighter's objective is to make money. All right. So the bottom line is we're sharing the same theme here, right? They want to make money, right? So
we're all on the same page right now.
So what I don't understand then is when you have two networks, rival networks that hate each other, realizing that they're going to make some money, they sit down and do like most successful businesses do. They come up with a compromise and they get the deal done so they can all make what?
Money.
Right. Now, when promoters...
I like this, Ted.
Yeah, this is a good one for you. When promoters sit down and their main objective is to what?
Make money.
Right, they make money, okay? So now when they sit down and they want to get a fight. All right, so now I ask you this. And this is a tricky one, all right?
Okay.
Since we've been saying everybody wants to make money. Now we have two fighters that everybody wants to see fight. You have two different promoters that want to make money, and you have rivaling networks that want to make money.
There's a lot of money to be made.
I ask you this, Sal. How come those fights aren't being made if the objective for everyone involved is to make money?
You're right. That's the $1 million question. No pun intended.
Well, you know what the only answer is? That one side doesn't really want to fight the other guy. I mean, you can't. Right. At the end of the day, it's all about the money. And if it comes down to a fact where there's not enough money on the table, well, then the negotiation part needed to be reworked or whatever. You know, so when people are pounding on their chest after they beat up a pizza delivery boy or something, or the beer guy in the stands, when they beat that person up and they're in the ring calling out everybody, saying that us Mexicans, that's right, us Mexicans don't F around and all that stuff, then run from the other fighter. What does that tell you? And speaking of bowling alley beat-ups, Floyd Mayweather, who I got to give a lot of credit to, he came out recently and said, enough is enough, all lives matter, which I thought was great, and he was criticized he was criticized by the Black Lives Matter movement by going against his people, which I thought is ludicrous. I applaud Floyd Mayweather for saying what I think everyone really believes. All lives matter.
I think at the heart of the level, yes. Lives do matter.
All lives matter. Stop with it's just like we got to stop with the division. We need unity. I was very glad to hear Floyd say that, and he said it publicly. But then I had a chuckle because even though Adrian Broner and him have went at it, it's been reported that Adrian Broner is now living at Floyd Mayweather's house while Floyd helps him through this difficult time. So
maybe he gets more fan mail going towards Mayweather's house than he can in the jail cell.
I don't know. Maybe Floyd is. No, I know. I got it. But I think Adrian Broner is. I don't know, but hey, let's. I got some scores here to go over. First and foremost, in the baseball playoffs, we have the ALCS, the American League Championship Series. The Indians, the Cleveland Indians, who I predicted would be in the World Series, they're up on the Blue Jays 2-0. Over in the National League Championship Series, the Dodgers, behind Clayton Kershaw last night, kept the Cubs scoreless to tie that series at one game apiece as the Dodgers topped the Cubs 1-0. I still think the Cubs will come out on top and play the Indians in the World Series. So that's what's going on there. In the NFL, we got some other stuff going on, and I will give you all the scores. I will. I'll get to it. But all the scores in the NFL right now. The Bills top the 49ers 45-16. The Redskins over the Eagles 27-20. The Titans over the Browns 28-26. The Giants beat the Ravens. They came from behind to beat the Ravens 27-23. The Saints put a beating on the Panthers for a while, and then the Panthers made it interesting, coming back to almost steal a win from the Saints, but came up short. The Saints topped the Panthers 41-38. The Panthers now, Sal, are 1-5. They were in the Super Bowl last year. They're 1-5. The Jaguars, the Bears. I like the Bears, but the Bears.
I like the Bears.
But the Bears get into scoring position and can't score touchdowns like yesterday. They were there several times. They were leading the game most of the game, but they ended up losing 17-16 because they had to settle for field goals instead of touchdowns. It's very disheartening, especially if you're a Bears fan. But Lions beat the Rams 31-28. The Dolphins beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steelers who spanked the Jets and laughed all the way home about it. 30-15. Now, Big Ben Roethlisberger hurt his knee. He's out for the season, it looks like. So hopefully that'll be the end of the Steelers. The Patriots keep on winning as, the joke of it all. They keep saying Tom Brady's got rust. Doesn't look like it. 35-17 over the Bengals.
Right. He's got rust on his trophy case.
That's
it.
it.
Get some new ones.
He's got dust on his trophy case, not rust. But the Chiefs, 26-10 over the Raiders. Raiders displayed no defense in that game yesterday. And I think somebody had said once before that the Raiders should play on the road all the time because they play so much better. And I think that person was right. Seahawks topped the Falcons 26-24. The Cowboys beat up the Packers 30-16. Cowboys look like the real deal in the NFC East. And in the late game, the Texans topped the Colts 26-23. Monday Night Football, the Jets look to get spanked again as they travel to Arizona to face the Cardinals. FYI, the Cardinals are a 7.5-point favorite over the hapless Jets. So I know for a fact.
You never know. It could be an upset tonight. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I know. It won't necessarily be an upset. But I know somebody will be upset, and that will be me. Joining us right now is my man Dax Khan, and he's going to give us his thoughts on the big fight. Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko. What's up, Dax?
The Bears.
The Bears.
Good morning, Dax.
The Bears. People forget about that. That was great with Saturday Night Live. The Bears, and then they went through a whole thing with that. But anyway, now you just say the Bears.
Even young kids.
I'm an old Bears fan because I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I loved and I read the biography book on Brian Piccolo. When Brian Piccolo and Gale Sayers, they were a good team. They used to play for the Bears. Correct?
That's correct. I met Brian Piccolo and Gale Sayers when I was a kid. His niece, Brian Piccolo's niece, lived near me, and I was at a birthday party, and they were there. But anyway,
I love the story too. The movie, I think it was called Brian's Song.
Yeah, it was.
And James Caan played Brian Piccolo.
Yeah, I still cry.
Was a Wake Forest player from Wake Forest, and who succumbed to cancer during his career. Yeah, it was a sad story, but in memory of Brian Piccolo and Gale Sayers. I just want to correct and make sure I was right with they were from the Bears.
Well, Gale Sayers is still alive, so
I know he is. I know he is. No.
One of the greatest ever. But Dax, tell us what's your thoughts on it. Let's talk about Anthony Joshua and Klitschko.
Go, Dax. Shut me up.
This is huge for boxing. I have been debating, arguing, bringing up facts to people, not only fans, but other members of the sport all weekend, pertaining to not only this fight, but Anthony Joshua, the heavyweight division, and boxing as a whole, and what this actually means for boxing. You brought up a very valid point before, Bill, on Vladimir Klitschko. No matter what your opinion is of him, he was a dominant champion who fought everyone. Not the strongest era, but it doesn't matter what era you're in. To be a champion for 9.5 years straight, that means something. Age has caught up with Vladimir Klitschko more than an opponent. The 40 years old and the being uninspired is what beat Vladimir Klitschko a lot more than Tyson Fury, in my opinion. Now, for them to have this at the they're going to have it at the Manchester O2 Arena. They're still ironing out a few little bugs there because of Fatboy Slim and Madness. Both had that the O2 book that week. They're trying to get past that obstacle. From what I heard, it's taken care of. The same thing with the broadcast on Showtime or HBO. Some people have said that, this fight may not happen.
No,
Vladimir
it's done deal.
Klitschko's manager kind of downplays it. But fact is, Anthony Joshua was set to defend his title November 29th. They canceled that date.
Listen, but after we spoke and yesterday, it was reported on the BBC on the radio yesterday that it is signed, sealed, and delivered. They're just waiting now. The only obstacle, and they did move all the other dates out of the arena, but the only thing they're waiting on now, from what I understand, the latest, is just one sanctioning body, the WBA. So it looks like the IBF and IBO belts will be on the line. The WBO cashed out and went with Bob Arum. So they're waiting for the WBA. And the WBA situation is so confusing. I think they're just figuring out a way of how they can make it all work. But this fight's going to happen, Dax. And I think, listen, this, to me, and I know you agree with me, but I want to hear your thoughts anyway. This is what fighters are supposed to do. They're supposed to fight the best fights that they can. They're both making a lot of money. I think they also agreed to a 50-50 split, somewhere around $16 million apiece, U.S. They're going to waive the traditional purse split just so they could make this fight happen, which is a substantial amount of money each. And the bottom line is, Vladimir Klitschko didn't pull a Danny Garcia. I need a tune-up fight. He's been out for a year. He will be out over a year by the time they step in the ring. This is what great fighters do, Dax.
It's absolutely Klitschko, and
That's absolutely right.
You've gotten on me before, and a lot of people have gotten on me when I've said Klitschko is going to be a guy, win, lose, or draw with this fight. In a few years' time, he'll be looked back on as one of those champions that was a great champion. You always miss him more when they're not around. But on to our topic. Last year, about this time, we started talking about the heavyweight division. The heavyweight division has always been the flagship. It was stale for a long time. We were excited. There was a lot of movement. We had undefeated fighters like Tsar Glazkov. You had Charles Martin, Brazil, etc. They were getting the exposure. You had the Andy Ruizes. Maybe not the exposure we wanted to, not the opponents we wanted them to fight, but they were getting, their name was being talked about. People were talking about the division. We had the guys from overseas nobody really had a chance to see but always heard about, the Joseph Parkers, the Lucas Browns, and so on. You had your veterans, the Tony Thompsons, the Chris Ariolas, the Pulovs, that were always there to help these guys coming up look good but not be showcase opponents. We had the guy over there who still may be the second best in boxing, the heavyweight division, Povetkin. We didn't get to see a lot of Povetkin, but, he always delivered. You had Luis Ortiz, the feared puncher. Despite the PED issues, everybody wanted to know about Luis Ortiz. They wanted to see him. This is what heavyweight boxing had to be. This is what we wanted. Then we had the upset of the apple cart with Vladimir Klitschko, Tyson Fury, and that actually, in my opinion, added to the mystique, the appeal of the division, and things grew so quickly. Then things got stale. Now all of a sudden, Anthony Joshua goes in there and he fights Charles Martin. This is an Al Heyman fighter who went over to the UK, a guy who could have stayed here and he could have made a lot of money against second-rate competition and the fans would have bought it, but they went over there. Why did they go over there? Because of Anthony Joshua. This kid, I keep arguing with people, Bill, Sal, is the future of the division. He is going to take this sport to another level. This division that was always the flagship of boxing is going to come that way again because of Anthony Joshua. The one argument
I agree with you, Dak.
Me too. I've been saying it for forever.
I think you're so right on, Dak. I love hearing this.
And not only that, I think that this fight, both Klitschko and Joshua, are showing how much of a fraud Deontay Wilder really is, and how they've been coddling him. He doesn't have one name on his resume that matches Forget about Klitschko's resume because you can't even talk about those two in the same breath. But in the last half a dozen fights of Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder has not one name that's comparable to the guys that Joshua has beaten. I mean, what are you gonna? Are the Wilder fans gonna throw Berman Stavern's name in my face? Come on.
17 fights, Bill. Okay, in his last 4 fights, Anthony Joshua's opponents are a combined 79, 1, and 2. People don't know some of the names, but you know what?
Wait a minute. In his last how many fights?
His last 4 fights, 71 and 2. 79, 1, and 2. They have an combined average 75% KO ratio between them.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, a couple of his opponents had higher than 80% of KO ratio. This year alone, he won a world title, and he made a defense against 2, an undefeated champion and an undefeated opponent. Out of those last 4 opponents, Bill, only one, Gary Cornish, who was bigger than Anthony Joshua, had 1 loss, and he was 23-1. 1 loss. Dominic Breazeale, Charles Martin, Dillian White, all undefeated fighters. Dillian White, we say about people and fighters, you stress it all the time. What about testing yourself, showing us something? Dillian White was a guy that beat Anthony Joshua in the amateurs. He had Anthony Joshua's number in terms of the mental game leading up to that fight. He stunned Anthony Joshua in that fight. Joshua overcame that. He knocked out Dillian White. He has a 100% KO ratio. The most important thing about all that is, it's not so much those numbers. The most important thing about that is Anthony Joshua, the way he carries himself. In the last 5,
Dax.
6, 7 years,
Dax, wait,
we have gotten so tired of these guys that talk so much, but they don't deliver. If they don't talk, they're so quiet that fans don't get a chance to know these fighters, so they can't relate to them. I stress all the time, what makes boxing great is the fact that it's a sport where you follow one person and you become connected with that one person, and this is what makes the sport so great when you don't have a chance. And we see a lot of guys, even a Roman Gonzalez, because he doesn't have that the language barrier broken, he doesn't get that much coverage in terms of followers in the mainstream. Anthony Joshua is able to do that. He is going to be, in a few years' time, no, he doesn't, he hasn't, he may not accomplish what they have, and he hasn't, obviously, of course, but in my opinion, if you're going to compare him, going back to the Mike Tyson era, Anthony Joshua is the Joe Louis compared to Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was always brash, he was always doing stuff, he was always going against the public opinion, and then Joe Louis came in, and he was humble, he spoke nicely, he spoke quietly, he did his job inside the ring, and that's what we have right here with Anthony Joshua.
That's a good analogy.
It is. I just want to, I don't mean to correct you, but Gary Cornish was undefeated when he stepped in the ring with Anthony Joshua. So of those 4 opponents you mentioned, he actually there was only one, Charles Martin had a draw. Everybody else was undefeated. The fight prior to that against Kevin Johnson had 6 losses. But those 4 fights.
Never knocked out.
What's that?
But he was never knocked out, though.
No, he wasn't. He got knocked out in 2. But my point is those 4 fights you mentioned, they were against the combined records. There was no losses, not one, none.
I thought Cornish had a loss.
Well, they all had a loss. They all gained a loss. Breazeale, Charles Martin, Dillian White, and Gary Cornish after they fought Anthony Joshua. So he issued their first losses, and I agree with everything you said. I mean. This is what it's about, and I love the fact that he's humble. I love the fact that he's willing to learn. Talking about Anthony Joshua, and the best thing now is it's obvious that he's willing to fight whoever. He wanted the domestic fight with Dillian White, and he got it. He fought Charles Martin. He just happened to fall into that. Charles Martin, in my opinion, had no business being a champion. And he took out a tough Dominic Breazeale. This kid is the real deal. I can't wait to see Klitschko and Joshua fight. I love it, man.
And you know what?
A loss by either fighter will not really hurt their.
And what makes Vlad, this, in my opinion, to me anyway, raises my respect for Vladimir Klitschko, because, and I have said this many times in terms of passing the torch. irregardless of the loss to Tyson Fury, in the history of the sport, we've always seen the greats help usher in another era. Vladimir Klitschko going in there against Anthony Joshua, should Joshua be successful, he is, passing the torch to the guy that people expect to take that division over. So the fact that Vladimir Klitschko is going in there and doing that instead of arguing with the sanctioning bodies and trying to get a fight against a no-name opponent, to me, that raises my level of respect for Klitschko.
And
that's a nice spin on it, and I agree with you 100%. I think that's great.
Well,
it's a great way to look at it.
The only other thing the other thing I see out of this fight being made, and the excitement that's already behind it, is Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder has clearly showed that he was a fabricated champion. And no disrespect to him, because he's a great guy and he fights for a great cause and he's always in shape and all those things. But let's be real. It's like, everybody's in. Somebody emailed me one time. It's like everybody's in on the joke except for him. He pounds his chest just like Daniel Jacobs and says they're the best in the division. And what does he have to show for it? Here's a guy. I mean, I know he's injured now, but Berman Stavern is the big name on his resume. Berman Stavern. And we saw Berman Stavern wasn't exactly a world beater. I think we all overrated Stavern. And now Povetkin and Stavern have to fight to gain a shot at Wilder. And listen, Dax, this fight, Anthony Joshua Klitschko, really turns the attention away from Deontay Wilder, and he can pound his chest as much as he wants. I can't see anybody thinking that he's the best heavyweight in the division right now.
I've spoken to a few people over the last couple weeks, and from that are close to Matchroom's camp, and from what I was told, this really has been a plan for quite some time, ever since Tyson Fury started coming out with the "I'm a fat guy," showing his stomach in public when he started pulling out. So, I think, from what I understand, Anthony Joshua, more or less, was being told, and they were preparing to make this fight. They knew this fight was going to happen.
Yeah, well, it's a good fight, and now that the fall of the PBC, you're going to see these fighters scrambling to try and get these fights. They're going to be more willing to work. And then you're going to see them get exposed one by one, and now just to jump off topic for a second, Danny Garcia, who I do think is a real fighter. Don't get me wrong, I do. I followed his career from the beginning, but once he jumped on that Al Heyman / Floyd Mayweather model, his value, in my opinion, has gone down, similar to Saul Canelo Alvarez. People could be supportive of him all they want, but his value clearly has gone down, and the pay-per-view numbers show it.
Yes, it absolutely has, ever since the Mauricio Herrera fight. That was billed as a homecoming fight. This fight here in Philadelphia is billed as a homecoming fight. I think pretty much the consensus of boxing fans and a lot of media and broadcasters, etc., will say that Danny Garcia was lucky to leave Puerto Rico with those titles. A lot of people also believe Danny Garcia fled the 140-pound division due to the fact of Victor Postol, irregardless of how the Terrence Crawford fight turned out. And they, when word that Terrence Crawford was moving to that division, Danny Garcia is not a full-fledged welterweight. He can make 140 pounds. Nobody will convince me differently. He fought a Rod Salka. He was given, in my opinion, he was given a generous decision against Lamont Peterson. He beat a shot Paulie Malignaggi. How a 2-2 Robert Guerrero faced him for the vacant WBC title is politics. I think we can all figure out how that took place. Now he's fighting this guy. And, he talks about, and not only him, but the guy that supposedly this is going to set up a showdown, a mega showdown of sorts with Keith Thurman. They speak about Errol Spence. Now, this is another kid, much like Anthony Joshua, something that boxing wants and something that can help turn around the 140-pound division, 147-pound division, and where separate the frauds from legitimate fighters. Errol Spence, he has been a little bit vocal, more than he usually is, this last week, since hearing about the Danny Garcia and Vargas fight, and stating, they talk about how I need to prove myself, yet I already beat the opponent that Danny Garcia has faced, and I beat an opponent that Keith Thurman couldn't stop even quicker. I knocked out a former champion that Manny Pacquiao couldn't knock out despite trying. Yeah, I have to prove myself to who? Or do they have to prove that they're not afraid of me?
Well, he's right, and I think that's another great example of why the PBC walls are coming tumbling down, because Errol Spence, as far as I know, is a PBC fighter, isn't he? I'm pretty sure he is.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so I think they're just maybe trying to lay the groundwork, or maybe some of these fighters are finally realizing, hey, we got to start taking our careers in our own hands, and maybe that's what Errol Spence is doing.
I had a debate. Not to interrupt. I had a debate that was. This would interest you with John Scully this weekend, and you say it all the time on the show about once you're a champion, your developmental time is over. You're not being groomed, and you used to argue with me about that. John Scully had stated about Anthony Joshua. I don't think he's. I had stated on social media that I think Anthony Joshua might have the highest rise since in terms of becoming a global superstar in boxing since Mike Tyson. I worded it a little bit wrong. I got a lot of flack about that. And John Scully brings up, well, if I brought pictures of Tyson and Ali in public and one of Joshua, they wouldn't know Tyson, they wouldn't know Joshua, they'd know the other two. Correct. But that was a different time in the sport. Right now, this time in the sport is where boxing is rebuilding with names like Anthony Joshua and Errol Spence. I stress social media and the importance of it all the time. When you're looking at these big names, including PBC fighters, when you have a Vladimir Klitschko, who was a decade-long champion, he's followed by under 300,000 people. Tyson Fury, a guy who's more popular due to his antics outside the ring than inside, has less than 500,000. Deontay Wilder, the guy who has the coveted the big PBC fighter, less than 200,000. Yeah, Anthony Joshua has almost 1 million social media followers on just one account. So that tells you who the public is paying attention to. And that tells you exactly what the public wants, because the public only pays attention to two things: when people act like an idiot, or when people are doing exactly the things that they're hoping for. Obviously, Anthony Joshua and obviously Errol Spence Jr. is doing what the public hopes for, so why aren't the promoters sitting there rewarding them for doing what they're doing? Anthony Joshua is being rewarded, Errol Spence not so much.
Well, we'll see. It looks like he's heading in the right direction, because like you said, they'll probably set up a fight, Danny Garcia against Keith Thurman, and then Sean Porter and Errol Spence, and then the winner of the Spence-Porter fight fights the winner of Garcia-Thurman. That would be an interesting couple of fights to keep track of. So, but anyway, great job as usual.
I heard a fantastic poem this weekend, Bill, and Sal, and I know that Sal would love it. And when I seen it, I really thought about the sport, not only in its state today, but how it used to be in those times when, especially when you do the blast from the past and you speak about all these guys who overcame these types of, as the underdogs. And, in this poem, it was fantastic, and the guy says in here, he goes, they make the odds and predict the winners before the fight. But, what the odds don't understand is, once between the ropes, it's not a math test. Ask any underdog who beat the odds, and they'll tell you the odds makers forgot to factor in desire. No matter what the stats may say, no matter what the experts may think, no matter what the commentator may predict it, once that bell rings, the race is on and all bets are off. Don't be surprised if suddenly one guy decides he's going to flip the script and take a pass at yelling uncle. That's when they say, folks, we got to fight. They wrote the history books too soon. Even before it's over, you're watching history be rewritten.
That's good. That's cool. I like it.
It's good. I like that very
much. It's the
and
truth.
It's so true. So
I know. It is. Hey, Dax, great job as usual. We're going to be here all week except tomorrow, so hopefully we can hear from you again. Keep us posted on all the social media action. And, of course, this fight coming up in December, Joshua against Klitschko. And then, of course, we got another big one coming up in less than a month with Andre Ward trying to snatch the world light heavyweight title from Sergey Kovalev's grasp. So we got a couple of good fights to close out the year. So I'm excited. And hopefully we can keep it going.
And that hopefully we keep it going. I would love it. I think everybody in boxing will love it. and whoever wins that light heavyweight title is a mark. If Kovalev keeps that title or Ward wins it, I almost don't want to be in their position because they're going to be marked guys, and there's no way they're going to be able to fight anybody below that top 3 level, let alone the top 10.
Oh, what do you mean? I mean, if whoever
That's what
wins,
it should be.
but whoever wins that fight is going to be the best is going to be the best light heavyweight in the world. There's no one close to either one of those, with the exception of Adonis Chicken Stevenson. So aside from him, who else? I mean, you know, Tony Bellew making some noise. Okay, so Tony Bellew fights him. I mean, I guess what you mean is it's a lose-lose situation because they're going to be fighting guys that have belts and are going to have a mandatory, and really they're going to be no names, right? Is that what you meant?
Right, the public isn't going to accept anything less than the most dangerous fighters.
Exactly.
One last thing, social media. Somebody said this weekend, the fighters that are being avoided, the best fighters seem to be avoided, or they're not getting the fights. And I said, no, the guys who are the most dangerous fighters are the guys not getting the fights. The Triple Gs. That's a dangerous fighter, and a guy in the light heavyweight division, in reference to this, who I believe is going to be avoided very soon, is Arthur Beterbiev. He's going to be in a situation just like Errol Spence. Nothing he does is ever going to be enough to prove he's ready to take that next step.
Well, all they got to do is sign the papers and let them fight. Stop with everybody's got to stop with the division and start with some unity, and we'll be all right. But Dax, great job. We'll look forward to you later in the week, my man.
All right, everybody, have a good day.
Take care.
Take care, Dax. Good job.
Sal,
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, the best fights have to be made, and Dax is 100% right. The way the world is today, with social media and instant news being able to be broadcast and what have you, it's like you and I always say, the news isn't just reporting the news. It's the same in boxing. They're not just reporting what's going on. They're actually stimulating what the boxing scene is like. And when you have the people like the promoters and networks and, trying to make their way the best and not, our champion's the only champion and all of this stuff, all this division, the end result is what we're going through now, don't you think?
100% correct. You're 100% correct, and that's the whole thing. And that's why, boxing's got to be back on the fire with making the right matches, making the right fights, and promoting it in a good, honest way that's going to be a great delivery system to the fans.
What's your thoughts, real quick, on Daniel Jacobs turning down, at least reportedly turning down, $1.9 million to fight Triple G? If it goes to purse bid and somebody wins that for $1 million, that gets the $1 million purse is divided up 75-25. 75 going to Triple G, 25 going to Daniel Jacobs. It would seem like he's outpricing himself, and then is going to discard his belt, because I see if Daniel Jacobs doesn't accept the fight with Triple G, that he's going to end up not being a champion, and I think his career goes down the toilet. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think you've got to put up or shut up right now. And this is the whole thing. He better, hold on tight, because he wanted this fight with Triple G. And I think he should be a man and go see it through. And that's the way he's got to do it on his end.
Well,
and whether he humbles himself or takes a lesser purse or whatever the heck, he's going to get an opportunity to be in with one of the best middleweight champions ever.
Well, listen,
or at least in this era.
Just because fighters say they want to fight somebody doesn't necessarily mean it. I mean, Saul Canelo Alvarez says, us Mexicans don't F around. I'll fight Triple G right now. I mean, that rings in my... I still laugh when I think of him saying that. And he's run...
You know what? And when I think about what Triple G did to Kell Brook, I mean, you realize he actually crushed his face. He broke his eye socket. I mean, that's a fist crashing into a skull, into a bone structure, and just, if you want to talk about Bone Crusher Smith from the days of heavyweight, well, Triple G is a bone crusher. I mean, that guy, the torque, the delivery, the power, the momentum behind that punch must have been awesome. And Of course, it could have been like a collision. Maybe Brooke was coming in, and bam, there was no room to go back. But think about that. He broke his bones. He crushed it.
That's why.
That's a lot of power to go up against.
That's why I want to see him in with Mayweather. I would love nothing more than see Mayweather get crushed. You know. But,
well, the whole, you know, I was going to say something, but that's why. That's why Triple G. You know, he's the real deal.
Well,
I think boxing should welcome that.
Mayweather should fight him to prove that he could beat him, and then talk about then he would have a leg to stand on, suggesting he's the best ever, or even in the top 10.
You and I are the ones. You and I are the ones that started that rumor in the media. I think we could promote it. You know, we're going to create the news. We're going to stimulate the news.
Well,
we're going to see Floyd Mayweather in the ring with Triple G one day, and we're going to talk about it every day.
When they're being introduced as former champions, that's the only time Floyd will ever step in the ring with him. Hey, I got some interesting stuff that took place on this day in boxing history, Sal. On this day, October 17th in 1999, Yosam Choi wins a 12-round decision over Saman Sor Jae Urong to win the WBC junior flyweight title. That took place in Korea. On this day in 1962, Emil Griffith wins a 15-round decision over Ted Wright to win the vacant European World Junior Middleweight title. That took place in Vienna. I've always wondered how an American could win a European title, but anyway. On this day in 1973, Ben Villaflor knocks out Kunaki Shibata in the first round to regain the WBA World Junior Lightweight title. It took place in Honolulu. On this day in 1938, remember Joey Archibald wins a 15-round decision over Mike Beloisi to win the vacant New York World Featherweight title. It took place in New York City. On this day in 1904, Joe Boker wins a 20-round decision over Frankie Neal to win the vacant World Bantamweight title, and that took place in London. And finally, on this day in 1910, Digger Stanley knocks out Joe Boyker in the 8th round to win the vacant British World Bantamweight title, and that fight took place in London as well. So that's what took place in the boxing world on this day in those years. Hey, Sal, we won't be doing a live show tomorrow, but we will be back Wednesday with the Blast from the Past, and, of course, Thursday and Friday. So I'm telling everybody to enjoy themselves over the next day or two and keep track of this Joshua Klitschko match that's coming our way, and we're all looking forward to it. And hopefully by Wednesday we can make an announcement if we're doing anything with the Kovalev fight, because I know Coach is anxiously waiting. So we'll leave everyone with this, Sal. I want everyone to make sure you tune in Wednesday morning. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, ciao, baby.